to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vice Chair, would you read our mission statement?
Marshall Public Schools develops the potential of each learner for success in a changing world.
Thank you. Accept the motions for approval of our agenda. Do we have any motions?
So moved.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Any additions or corrections or editorials to add? And we'll vote. Approved. Public forum. Now it's time for anybody in the public to approach the board. Okay. I bet you that'll change this year. Our first presentation and only presentation from Hoffman and Brobst. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have Tamara and Lisa from Hoffman and Brobst here this afternoon to make a presentation on the 2014-2015 audit. We began the process back in August, and we're very close to having it completed. And we had a visit last week, I believe, a week ago, with some of the board members and went preliminary information. And now this is a little bit more of a formalized presentation. So Lisa, welcome, and Tamara, welcome. And I would encourage, if you have any questions or thoughts as the information is presented, to certainly, you don't even have to raise your hand like they do in the debates, I don't think. You can just go for it, okay?
All right. You had a very good year this year. In your general fund, your revenues exceeded your expenditures by about $700,000. Most of that is due to an increase in your general education aid of $529 per pupil, as well as the state funding of all-day, everyday kindergarten, which you had already had. Now you're just having some funds reimbursed for that. The district also did a fairly good job this year of making a conscious effort to control some of the costs that could be controlled, which helped make up that $700,000 increase in your imbalance. Capital lease financing played an important role in your year this year. You had 3 different leases entered into, a $500,000 lease for a roof project and approximately $1.4 million for some technology upgrades. And then I will also say that there was some more technology upgrades in July of 15, which hits this current fiscal year that you're in. So you'll see a little bit more of that this next year. We issued just under $8 million of bonds for energy conservation measures and indoor air quality improvements. Most of those bonds were what were called QZAP bonds, or Qualified Zone Academy, so they're a 0% interest rate. And out of that total, $7.9 million, about 2.9 was at 2.65%. So very low interest rate for a very small portion of those bonds. We'd like to congratulate the district. You received the Meritorious Budget Award for 2015, and you also received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for 2014 for your comprehensive annual financial report. One of the biggest changes in your financials this year, and this impacts the statements in the front, what we call the converted GASB 34 statements, was the implementation of GASB 68. GASB 68 requires any government unit that has a portion of their defined benefit plans run through a state-run plan, so TRA, PERA, you needed to report on your books the portion that was applied to the district of the state's deficit. And in Marshall's case, it was about $14 million. So that's a hit to your fund balance, but it's not going to change your funding structure. It doesn't change what you collect for employees, pay for employees. It's just the way of having the state's defined benefit pension plans allocate their net loss for the years that are accumulated to each governmental unit. So cities, schools, states, and counties have that. Okay, what's coming up for you? You get to have an increase in your general education formula for FY16, so the year that you're currently in. You will see an additional $117 in funding per pupil. And with your levy, there's different components of your levy. The state allowed the board to have a board-approved referendum authority, which is just a different piece of the component. You do not increase your levy for that. You just reallocated how much is voter-approved versus board-approved.
And if you recall, a couple years ago, the location equity revenue, does that ring a bell with anybody? And then now the local optional revenue, that's all part of that whole process. And so, in essence, it really doesn't change a whole lot, but you authorize that $32.51 to bring us up to $300 per pupil unit, and then we receive from the state $424 in local optional revenue, or we will be receiving it this year of 15-16.
And as you all are aware, you formed a facility study committee to review the existing facilities and to see what you can do to help with the increase in growth that's expected in your student count. The graph here shows where you're going in the years. So starting in FY15, which is the year we just completed, there was about 2,300 with about ADMs, average daily memberships. We only chart out 3 years further into this, so FY18, that number increases to 2,449. And those, I just wanted to point out that those student counts are based on data that you currently have. This changes several times a year as more information becomes available with enrollment changes. So right now, that's kind of where your trend is going. I would say you are unique in that respect. Most districts are seeing a much flatter line or actually an inverse line where the enrollment is decreasing. This graph shows your fund balance in your general fund compared to your cash balance. It's kind of a way to see, on a real basis, do we have cash to say how we're funding your operations? And you have a strong fund balance and you have a strong cash balance. The orange color, 2012 is the last year you issued 8 anticipation certificates. So what the orange number shows is your cash balance that you have available at June 30 in your general fund. And it subtracts out any short-term debt, so any line of credits that you had out there and any 8 anticipation certificates. And as you can see, it's been positive since 2012. 2012 was a low year. That was when the state was changing some of their funding mechanisms and changing the metering of their state aids. So you are in a good cash position, you're in a good financial fund balance position. Your average monthly expenditures are just over $2 million a month, which equates into approximately 17.6% of your expenditures are covered by your fund balance. Fund balance policy states that you strive to maintain a minimum of 8%, so you are well within your fund balance policy. And again, I'd say you have a very strong fund balance, but I don't consider it excessive in any way. This slide is showing your general fund revenues by source, and as you can see with this category name, I'm not sure why that didn't come across. The biggest one on the 2015, the 81%, that is your revenue from state sources. So as on the bottom, it's state sources. Other local and county is the 7%, and the 10% is your local property tax. So as you can see, the state sources are by far the largest, with the general education aid being the largest portion of that. So state revenue is approximately $19 million for Marshall, and your general education aid, the yellow part, is about $15.7 million of that. The small portion, 3% of your money, comes from federal sources, and that's what requires you to have a single audit. This year we tested 2 programs, food service, which is not reflected here, and then special education, which is in there. Food service accounts for about $646,000 of your revenue, and special education federal is about $351,000. So going forward, they have raised the single audit threshold to $750,000. You still qualify, so you will be getting a single audit again next year, and that's all federal mandates by how much you receive in federal aid. This is another way to look at your general fund revenue by source, and the green is your state source. So you can see throughout the years, the type of revenue that you're getting from the different sources remains fairly consistent. State aids are by far the most. Local property taxes, you'll see a little dip in 2014 that's when they had this tax shift, so they play with where it comes from state or local. That was 0 this year, so it's back to where it was in 2013, so that's a comparable measure. Your basic ed aid was about $529, like I said, $529 per pupil for about 60 students more this year than last year, so that's why the green is up a little bit more this year. Your expenditures by object. There's a whole different slide than I have. The salaries and wages, employee benefits combined are about 80%, so the orange and the yellow. The other expenditures are 1%, and the capital expenditures up there are 5%. Capital expenditures took a little bit more of your pie this year than last year. Last year it was 2%. That's your roof and technology leases. So the way you need to account for your capital leases, you get all the expenses in the current year and you get the revenue for the capital lease proceeds. So it shows an increase in your expense, an increase in other financing sources. So that's what's changing your fluctuation for capital. Otherwise, you'd be very comparable to where you were. This is another picture of your expenditures by object for the general fund. Again, as is with revenue, the different types of expenditures that you have remain fairly consistent throughout the years. This is the 5-year picture of that. Salaries and employee benefits take up the biggest percentage, which they should, like what you do with teachers to educate the students. Purchase services include things such as utilities, the payments to the service cooperative for the contracts, and consultant fees, as Bruce said, it includes audit fees as well. And then equipment is self-explanatory, and then other is like insurance, payments and transfers in and out. The transportation expenditures that are in Fund 1 are only for things like field trips, sporting events where the football team goes, basketball teams, speech, FFA, those types of things. In Fund 3, your transportation fund, that's where your general bus routes are accounted for, and that's an additional $1.3 million in expenditures in addition to the about $155,000 that's in Fund 1 for transportation. And then this graph shows overall regular instruction and exceptional instruction. Together, those two account for about 64% of the district's overall expenditures, which again is very similar to what we see, and that's what you should see if you're spending on is the teaching kids. Just to touch on a few of the other funds, your food service fund balance decreased about $25,000. Cost of food is going up. Salaries are going up to be a little more competitive in the market. And there's also fewer students choosing to eat the lunch provided. They're either bringing their own, not eating, what have you. Community service fund increased about $43,000. That's due to some mostly tuition collections for your preschool programs. It was a great job this year in collecting those tuitions. And the building construction fund was established this year, as I talked about earlier, with those bonds that were issued for energy conservation measures and indoor quality air improvements. The debt service fund increased about $10,000, which is to be expected. We expect that to go up. You're required to levy 105% of your debt service expenditures. So the increase in the levy over the anticipated debt service cost plus any interest earned should help raise your fund balance. Your OPEB debt service, which is the one to pay your health insurance for retirees, increased about $1,500. Again, you levy 105%, so that makes sense. And then your OPEB revocable trust account net earnings of about $8,500, which is down a little bit from last year. The market wasn't as strong this year as it was last year. And then you transferred out approximately $60,000 to the general fund to cover the employee benefits, which is all determined based on the actuary's report. Nothing struck us this year as unusual or odd. Everything fell in line with expectations. Staff did a great job in being prepared for us. Very helpful in getting things done. Appreciate that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
We have the PDF version of the audit report that was emailed to you. You can look it over. We did not print the hard copies, so once you have a chance to look it over, So ready for take forward the plan and
And then we'll ask for your approval of the actual audit document when we have our regular meeting regular business meeting coming up in 2 weeks. And if you would certainly like a hard copy, a bound copy, be happy to provide that for you.
Very good. Board forum, anybody on the board have anything you'd like to bring up?
I'll give a quick update on the Pride in the Tiger Foundation. Mr. Munson and I are part of that. A lot of continued great things going on with Pride in the Tiger and how it benefits commercial schools. A couple things on the personnel side. Law is resigning. I think that was effective our last meeting. That was expected. And then Bill has got about a year left, so they'll be in a transition period to try to determine who they're going to get the foundation, how they want the foundation to run in the future. The Funds Use Committee just approved $32,000 to go to Marshall Public Schools for different projects that are submitted by the staff. That's of $38,000 that was actually submitted. So I think there was only about $5,000 that was declined through that process, which is pretty good. The budget this year is about $73,000, so about 80% the same type of allocation next time. We're thinking about different ways of getting up to that budget number. The other thing that they get impacted by is the scholarships. Last year, they awarded $146,000 in scholarships to the seniors graduating. That was 120 students, and of all the students that applied and qualified, 95% of those applications were actually approved dollars for those. So that's really good. Golf tournament fundraiser was this past summer, and that raised about $12,000, which goes towards that fund use budget. And then there's going to be a lot of big picture discussions coming up in regards to strategy with the foundation. So more to come. It's a great organization for commercial public schools.
Anybody else? On our information pamphlet, P-card rebate information. Any questions?
I would just say that this is an ongoing program that certainly is beneficial to school districts in the state of Minnesota, the P-card process, and this notification is just for the MasterCard P-card, and we also have an American Express, which will get a statement probably in about 2-3 months. So combined, we have significant dollars that come back as a rebate to our school district. So it's a good thing.
And we have our truth in taxation on December 7th at 6:01.
Just a reminder about that typically that would be a meeting date that we would start at 4 o'clock, but that was approved in January to begin at 6:01 p.m. and the meeting will start at 6 o'clock, or essentially 6 o'clock, and then we'll transition right into the truth in taxation, and then the meeting will continue after truth in taxation. So if you have a different time under for that first meeting in December, please note that it is at 6 o'clock that it starts.
Facilities update. Did I go twice? Sorry. EL and SPED support staff discussion.
So I have this will be an action, actually 2 separate action items later on in the board meeting. I did put together some information for you to review in the form of recommendations. We've seen, as you know, significant enrollment growth this year in our student population, and part of that growth has been an increased number of students with special education needs, as well as an increased number of students who have English learner or EL needs. Had We have had a variety of conversations about both of those topics internally, and different staff have shared information and opinions with us. And after really taking a look at where we are at staffing-wise and our needs, and getting input from not only, but including Jackie and also Amanda, who are here to answer questions and I think to show support for the request. We're requesting 2 staffing increases. One would be for a part-time administrative assistant who can do many of the paperwork and timely activities and notifications that need to happen in special education. Those of you that understand special education know that once a request is made, that triggers all kinds of timelines, and we're now to the point, we believe, of where we have so many students who are going through evaluations and reevaluations, and our licensed staff is doing their best, and I think doing a good job, but maybe not keeping up with those things like we would want them to. So that request would help with those, specifically the evaluations and reevaluations. The second request is for 2 full-time EL positions. One would be a licensed, or we'd seek a licensed English learner teaching position, and the other would be for half-time EL teacher and half-time coordinator, somebody who can just maybe verify consistency between efforts in each building, share what's going on from one building in EL that's going really well with another building, prepare reports and summaries and keep us updated. And both of those are really largely driven by a pretty significant increase in our EL population of almost 70 students over last year. So the ratios have gotten higher, ratios of EL students to staff members, and we just feel like that's something that we need to try to get turned around and improve on. So I certainly can answer questions if you have any. Otherwise, later on you'll be asked to take action on those 2 approvals.
Is there enough staff for EL?
What do you think, Amanda?
We've been running behind on that, I think. Back in the Willard years, we were always behind. Is that enough staff for the increase of the EL population?
It's probably not where we need to be, but it's improved.
So if we get another influx, are you going to come back and ask for more?
Maybe.
I think what our goal is, Jeff, we need to evaluate our EL program. The thing Amanda and I have talked about, and just really see, is our current structure working? We think that it at times does, and maybe there's some things that don't work as well as we want them to, and we need to evaluate that. But right now, we also need to get these kids the help that they need, and that's staff for the time being. So I'm going to take Amanda off the hook a little bit, which I typically don't do, but so you're welcome in advance. If we do see continued growth in this area, we might be back and say, can we get more staff? But we also might be back in 6 months saying, for next year, here's how we want to restructure it. We're just really taking a look at the increase and how we can meet their needs, and also how we can help our staff as well. I think our staff are really working hard to do what they can for the kids that are on their caseload, so to speak, or in their building, but we need to help them out and give them a chance to do an even better job, and sometimes lower numbers can help them.
And certainly in a couple of our buildings, the student to teacher ratio has grown to a point where it's just too much, and we need to reduce those, and that has been a main part of our discussion and our plan at this point in time. And this would probably be step 1 of a couple steps as we move into the next year's budget planning session to accommodate this increased growth. And we look at our special education program and the number of students we have in that, and now we're looking at our EL program, and we're almost catching up as far as the number of students that we have in EL as compared to special education. But of course, there's two different situations there. But nonetheless, it has grown not exponentially, but it's certainly had a huge growth.
As a board member, I would like to see sometime this year, once you reorganize, what we have for EL.
I believe we talked about that, didn't we, Tricia? How about from either one of you ladies, any perspectives that you feel the board would benefit from being aware of, or things that maybe we haven't talked about or aren't in this recommendation?
Well, for the special ed assessment team support person, it's really about, right now we have licensed people doing paperwork type jobs that we don't necessarily need a licensed school psychologist or a licensed special education teacher to do. And so, what's happened with us is we've had some out-of-state enrollments in the district, and that often necessitates us reevaluating them from criteria. Or we have move-ins from other districts where the evaluation wasn't as comprehensive as it was supposed to be, and so it's on us then to reevaluate. And so just with the influx of people moving into Marshall, it's just created, even with very thoughtful planning to be ahead of the game, it's created us to be behind in some aspects. And so I think we can just take off some of the busy work of following up with phone calls and scheduling meetings and things, and put that to somewhere else that will put some pressure on places.
Does that special ed part-time person fall under the 68% reimbursement for salary?
Or however it works under the new system.
Right.
And these 3 positions, or 2.5 positions, are not budgeted for in our revised budget, but will be, if upon your approval, will be put in our final budget that show up in January. We do have an excess, as you recall, in our revised budget in the general fund, so we'd be able to support these positions. Again, part of our challenge with EL is finding qualified instructors, and I don't think probably almost any of our current EL instructors started out that way, but they.
A lot of our staff has started out just a teaching license and went back to. But I just want to say too that as we look at our EL program, what we may decide that we need, or maybe it's more minority advocates, or maybe it's funding for that training for the staff piece for all teachers to understand how to work with EL teachers. So that's why it's hard to say if we're going to come back and ask for more EL staff, but also just because of the nature of not knowing how many are going to come. So we've already heard that there are more coming in November, but we don't know how many. And so that just makes it difficult until they're actually here and we know the number. It makes it difficult.
I just don't want to see anybody fall through the cracks. Thank you. Facilities update.
So we have some meetings coming up for the Facilities Committee, as well as a couple of action items later on the agenda. One being to authorize to develop bond referendum documents, and also all the fees associated with the building bond referendum. Another would be to authorize the preparation of the review and comment. A lot of what I would say behind the scenes work and discussions, really getting things ready to roll out to the Facilities Committee and make sure that we're being as thorough as we can, but yet we also recognize, or I recognize, the need to get moving on that. So we have meetings this week and Tricia, you might have to help me out, Wednesday noon and Friday morning at 7 o'clock. Hopefully the Facilities Committee will be able to make it to one or both of those. And there will be more meetings. If you're not interested in being on the Facilities Committee, I should say if you're not interested in attending several meetings over the next few months, you might want to try to pawn that off on somebody else, because it's going to be busy, but I think it's going to be good as well.
Portable classroom update.
Warren and I met with Ron Helgerson from TSP on Thursday afternoon. last week and got an update in regards to his process as far as requesting proposals for the footing and foundation work that's going to be done, and that was accomplished on Friday. The documents went out with the goal that by Wednesday of this week we'll receive the proposals back, and there is interest from some of our local contractors to do that work. And once we get that decided on, then we'll be able to contact the satellite folks that are going to be providing the portable classrooms, double-wide classroom, and we'll be able to set a target as to when we want those portable classrooms to arrive. Obviously, the work, or most of the work, the foundation work, is going to need to be done prior to the portable classrooms arriving. And then there will be a temporary electrical connection that needs to be made, and so that we have connection for internet and intercom and everything else to make sure that those classrooms are going to be the same as the classrooms that are in Parkside as far as all those services go. And one other thing that we made a change on, and certainly want to thank Kurt for his help and insight. We are now going to be purchasing the portable classroom rather than leasing it or renting it or whatever. In the long term, well, both in the short term and the long term, it's a better way to go. And there is a good value that will be left after 2 years for the portable classrooms, and if we can sell it at that rate, we're going to turn out in a much better fashion in the long run rather than leasing or renting. So it's a good deal.
Our second readings of our policies, 701 to 705.1. Any questions? Now move on to our action items. Authorization to hire our special ed support staff. I'll make a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Action item of authorization to hire 2 English learner positions. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Open for discussion. Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Authorization to develop bond referendum documents. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And do we have a second? I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Trish, I hit the wrong button again. Good thing we have Trish here, isn't it? Lifesaver.
Say that every day.
We did yes, that was. Yeah, this is the one we're on, but I couldn't see. Motion was wrong, so this one. Now we can vote. Is it approved? Authorization to prepare, review, and comment. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Open for discussion.
And this is a necessary process that we have to go through with the Minnesota Department of Education. The school district will be providing some of the information for the review and comment. A great majority of it will come forward through ATS&R.
Please vote. Is approved. Anything else for the good of the cause? Again, I wish to thank Trish for helping me. You have it, doesn't it? So. Meeting's over, thank you.